Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my March reading wrap-up, stats, and favorites. So I start out each of these wrap-ups by telling you that this won't be me going over every book that I've read. I will go over my stats because I'm a nerd and stats are for nerds. I love it. And then I will go over my top reads of the year, not of the year, we're not there yet, of the month. Usually it's 5. This time I have 6 because I have an honorable mention. And we'll just talk about kind of the trends and the stuff that happened this month. If you'd like to know more about every single book that I'm reviewing, including more in-depth about some of these, you can check out this playlist right here, which is my weekly wrap-ups, where I talk about every single book that I read in much more detail than this. For this one, we'll just be kind of, grazing over my favorites and discussing that. I have my beautiful book journal here in front of me, which I will show off to you, even though it is a bit of spoilers here for you. I've really been working on my journal skills lately, and I'm pretty proud of myself. I, of course, heavily rely on the beautiful stickers that I get from Bree, her shop in Love and Words. I just love so much. So without further ado, we're going to dive into these stats, okay? So this month I got through 46 books, and it was a total of 14,947 pages. I also like to say, don't compare yourself to me with this unless you want to. I guess you're an adult, you could do what you want, but this is my full-time job. I do read full-time, and even before this was full-time, I usually read even more than I do now. Now I get caught up a little bit with the admin side of things and creating and stuff like that. So just know this is all relative. If you want to improve your reading speed or get faster at doing that, make sure you're doing it for you and because you want to consume more books, not because you're worried about comparing yourself to other people, because that is a road to burnout, my friends. It's a road to burnout. These books were in the following formats. I read 15 physical books. I had 16 audiobooks, which I gotta tell you made me so happy because I almost doubled how many audiobooks I listened to from previous months. I've gotten back in the groove for audiobooks, and it makes me so happy to do that. There was 19 ebooks and 16 ARCs. Now, of course, ARCs and ebooks, I read them the same way, but I just like to delineate between which of them were advanced copies of some certain books. So yeah. Then the ratings of these books were definitely, you can tell that I had some rereads this month because I had 8 6-star reads. Now, 3 of those were new 6-star books, which we'll obviously be talking about in the favorite section, but 5 of them were rereads. I do reread quite a bit, not only because I love rereading, but also because I do Patreon annotated books, and those are usually favorite books of mine that people are having me annotate, so that's how that works out. There was 9 5-star reads, 2 4.5, 15 4-star reads, 7 3.5, and 4 3-star reads, and I had 1 DNF. The subgenres, or where these fit within the romance categories, there was 17 contemporaries, 5 historicals, 6 fan fictions, 5 dark romance, 3 paranormal, 7 fantasy books, 1 suspense, 1 sci-fi, and 1 dystopian is what we got to. And then the tropes that got read the most this month were forced proximity, grumpy sunshine, friends to lovers, age gap, sports romance, surprisingly. I read a lot of sports romance this month, and BDSM, which is usually in there because I read a lot of books that have that. So, all right. So yeah, those are the stats. That's what we got through. Now let's talk about some favorites. And I'm excited to go through these. So we're going to start with Hyacinth by Minerva Spencer. This was a very anticipated read of mine. I'm actually going to put up a picture. Thank you for Rutu for sending this to me for my birthday. That was so sweet. But it is shiny, so I'll put up a picture of Hyacinth so that it's not bothering me the whole time. But this is book 2 in the Bellamy sister series, and there's some sisters that are on hard times because their father and their family is in tight straits. And so in the first book, Phoebe goes about trying to help the family in the way she can, which ends up being an arranged marriage with a neighbor. And in this one, Hyacinth, this is kind of taking place overlapping with the first book. So Hyacinth doesn't know that the family's money troubles are going to be taken care of soon. So she's doing what she can to keep the wolf from the door, is what she says. So she has taught herself how to be a card sharp, and she disguises herself as a man and goes to these different gambling hells, as well as getting invited to different card games where she plays. She's not addicted to gambling. She literally is doing this because she has the skill and the know-how, and she's able to do it. This heroine definitely has some neurodivergence. It's not completely clear like what that is in here, but for us, she definitely feels like she's on the spectrum in some aspects. The way that she doesn't think that she can feel certain things, the way that she analyzes certain things, the trademarks are definitely there for this. So she's been doing this, and so she's shy and awkward when she's a woman, but when she's a man, she's still shy, but she's able to use her skills. She's also a very tall, willowy woman, so she's able to pull this off. And then we have Sylvester Derrick, who is the Duke of Chatham, and he's bored with life. So he's actually a widower. He's in his late 30s, I think. And he's kind of fed up with women who only see his title, and he, is just kind of bored with women. He's bored with life. And so he starts playing cards, and he spots this young card sharp who he just finds very intriguing. And so Hyacinth is going by the nickname High, which can also be a man anyway. And so he's starting to kind of like feel a friendship with this young man. And it isn't long before he discovers her truth, but he doesn't discover it right away, and he actually isn't the only person to discover it. And once he discovers that this is a woman and he learns her reasons, she doesn't say who she really is, though. So she has two levels of deception going. Not only does she lie about who her family is and why she's needing to earn this money, because she's not only trying to earn the money for her family, but she also has a friend who is very ill, and she wants to make sure that he's taken care of for the rest of his life, which may be short, which is sad, but how it is. And so she has a lot on the line. And when the Duke, is like, you can't keep doing this. This is very dangerous. And we see cases of it being very dangerous for her. He demands that she not go out if he's not with her. So this is before there's anything like sexual happening between them. He just demands to kind of be her guard when she goes to some of these places. And she's also able to be invited to some, fancier places with more money on the line, by having a Duke as a friend who's chauffeuring her around. So when things kind of move into the sexual realm for this, which is, when she and he, finally reveal their feelings, we get into like the second phase of this, which is she is like, this is the date that I'm going to be done pretending to be a man and be done earning money. And during that time, let's be sex buddies. And High and him definitely experiment in some fun things. This definitely has them both being switches. He actually does enjoy some impact play, and that's something he's been ashamed of in the past, but High is like all for it because she's actually not a virgin. She has had a sex partner before, and they had actually taken the Kama Sutra and like were working their way through like positions and trying different sexual things together, which is really cool. So anyway, this is definitely a case of the hero falls first. High doesn't really believe she can be in love. And there's also the fact that, again, she's hiding that she's from a respectable family. An impoverished family they may be, but respectable they definitely are. And that adds a whole other layer of everything. So that was a longer summary than I needed to do for this, but I just love how Minerva Spencer does a romance and what she shares about what's in the characters' heads. It's also just very gritty, and our hero, he can tell that there is different ways that she thinks about things than him. And sometimes that makes him get frustrated. But a lot of times he's able to recognize it and realize that he needs to come about a scenario in a more logical sense or come at it from a different angle. And it really shows him trying to understand this woman that he's falling for and try to communicate with her in a way that they like both understand it. And I just really love that. And like, Minerva Spencer isn't afraid to make us uncomfortable with her stories, but I just love it all the more for it, and that's why I ended up giving this book a 6-star. There are some absolutely gut-wrenching scenes in this book, but though it kind of sort of has a third act breakup, the way the hero reacts to it, it's very clear that he never really is letting go, and I appreciate what he does to get her back, and I just really loved it. And I love a man who's not afraid to share his feelings and who's willing to put it on the line first, and I really feel like Chatham does that, and it made me root for him so much. So yeah, this was a 6-star read for me. It was a 3 on my swoon scale, and it was a 4 on the spice scale. It was very spicy. Minerva Spencer always brings the spice, but she brings the heart too, and I love that. All right, next we have, hi, editing Jen popping in here. This doesn't usually happen, but there was an extreme travesty that happened when I was talking about my favorite books, and I will kick myself multiple times if I don't just pop in. I knew I had more 6-star reads this month, and I had it circled on my spreadsheet as a book to talk about, but then I forgot to put it into my reading journal. When the Earl Met His Match by Stacey Reid, which I have already gushed about multiple times and put in multiple videos, I read this month, and I'm so sorry I forgot to talk about it, but this was absolutely a 6-star read. I loved the hero. He was so swoony to me. I loved the heroine and how strong she was and fighting for her child, and I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was beautiful. And I'm ashamed of myself that I didn't have it in here, but I just had to put it in. This was also a 6-star read, and it's fantastic. So there you go, back to the rest of the books I'm about to talk about. One of a few absolute tomes that I read this month. And of course, y'all knew I was going to have to wrap up the War of Lost Hearts series by Carissa Broadbent. I started this in February, made it through the first 2, and we dived into A Mother of Death and Dawn. There's not like too much detail that I will go into about this, but we do have Tisana, who has been on this incredible journey the whole time. She's trying to free slaves. She was a slave herself. Then she was a sex slave, being forced to be a courtesan. And then she became a fighter, a very powerful warrior. And now she's fighting for her love. Her love is in a really bad place at the beginning of this book, okay? Max and Tarius, my beating heart, man, he's in a tough place. And I know how some people feel that this series doesn't have enough romance for them as a fantasy romance. And I just have to say, I disagree. The romance looks different than a lot of fantasies we've seen in recent years. But the way that these two love each other, and the way that a lot of what they do is motivated by their love for each other as well as their love for the people around them. I think that if this series, if you took the romance out of it, it doesn't stand up the same way. It doesn't. And to me, that makes it a fantasy romance where the romance is just as important as everything else. And people don't have to agree. That's fine. That's fine. If it's not the kind of fantasy you're looking for, that's fine. That's fine. But I was hooked in every moment of the way through all 3 books of these. The audiobooks are amazing. The characters are epic. There's a character that I don't even want to say who they are, like who it is, because it's like a spoiler for earlier books until this character arrives. That character ripped my guts out at multiple points in this, and they kind of have their own like side romance going too, although I will say, like, I knew there wasn't going to be good things that happened for that. Like, I knew it wasn't going to go well. But this is an HEA for Max and Tisana, and the way, just who they are, I care for them so deeply. And to me, that's when an author does an amazing job. That it's a slow build to this world, but the world, though they're still able to surprise you with things, it's things that the groundwork is laid for. They're not just surprises that you could have never guessed. Like, there were times where I was following along and I was like, it's going to be this, it's going to be this. And sometimes I was right and sometimes I was completely wrong. It kept me guessing. It wasn't overly predictable the way a lot of fantasies are. Even though I was able to guess certain things at the right time, you know, like, it wasn't me being so much smarter than our characters that I was like, are you going to figure that out or not? Like, it was very well paced. It was very well done. And so that's why the War of Lost Hearts trilogy is going to stand high up there with series that I love. But I'm a fantasy lover at heart. I loved fantasy before I even knew I loved romance. And so this type of fantasy romance kills me. And again, people want to say it's more fantasy than romance. Yes, the fantasy is very fleshed out and it's there. But I don't think you can take the romance out of this and make it be the same like epicness that it is. And to me, that's the difference, right? It's what makes ACOTAR fantasy romance. You can't take Feyre and Rhys's love out of it, have them just be friends and have the same story told. And that's the same way for Max and Tessana, because there's something that's binding them together. This isn't even a fated mates story, which is crazy because it's usually got to be fated mates in fantasy, which I'm all here for. No judgment for that. But it's not fated mates in the same way that other things are, you know? It's fated mates in the way that like all good love feels like there's only one person for you, you know? So I loved it. This one was obviously a 6-star. This one was a 1.5 on the swoon scale. Swoon isn't super high in these because we don't get a lot of chance for the super swoony things, but do I believe that these two are ready to cut their souls open for the other? And do they at multiple points? Yes, they do. So yeah, and it is only a 1.5 on the spice scale. So that's the thing. But romance doesn't equal spice. And I just want to reiterate that. I know a lot of people know that. But when they say things that like, oh, there wasn't enough romance in it, do you mean there wasn't enough romance or do you mean there wasn't enough sex? Because yeah, there's not a lot of sex in this. People are being destroyed and people dying everywhere. It's not a sexy time for us to sneak away into our tent and fuck each other's brains out. We're tired. We're gritty. But that doesn't mean that the romance and the love isn't still present. You know? And I'm not judging anyone. I am not judging anyone because I've been the horn dog many times where I'm like, they didn't fuck enough in this book. I have literally said that about books before. I have. But in this case, I'm so passionate about this series and it makes me nervous when I see people say like, it didn't have enough romance for me. And those are personal choices. I'm wanting to tell you that like, if you can be okay with them not fucking every 100 pages in this book, like, it will move you. And it's a very unique fantasy that I haven't read a lot. It isn't just a cookie cutter like Beauty and the Beast retelling or someone saying it's ACOTAR but with this or ACOTAR but with this. Like it's not. It's not ACOTAR at all. It's its own thing. And that makes me very happy. And even speaking like, I'll just show this book real quick because I'm about to talk about it in a different video that I'm filming. Like I read her other series too. This one will give you Hunger Games and ACOTAR vibes. It's even got the black-winged, sexy, spicy man whose name starts with an R, okay? It's like he's his own type of whatever, right? And he has his passions that he's going for, right? This one feels like ACOTAR meets the Hunger Games, and I liked it a lot. I was going to say love it. I liked this a lot. But War of Lost Hearts, that's not what it is. It's its own thing. And I've done enough ranting. This isn't me preaching to you, but this is my channel where I get to toot the books that I love, and I go toot toot for War of Lost Hearts. That was awkward. Let's move on. The next one I want to talk about was an arc that I read of Fractured Souls by Neva Altaj. This is now out. It just released on the 30th. This is book 6 in her Perfectly Imperfect series. So Fractured Souls is about Asaya and Pavel. I might have mispronounced that. I'm sorry. And this starts very traumatically. It's surprising the punch that these books can have. Like, it really does. And the heroine is kidnapped from, like, a date that she goes on. She's kidnapped and raped and taken into forced prostitution, into sex slavery. That's what happens to her, as happens to so many women and children and people all over the world and in the United States still. This book is touching on something that is terrifying, and it happens all the time. It's probably happening in your city, and I know it happens in mine. So already this starts with a very heavy thing, but we don't have to sit in that too long. We have Pavel, who runs one of the clubs for the Bratva, and he's leaving work, and his car almost hits this naked woman who runs out in front of his car. And she is drugged out of her mind and barely surviving, and she collapses. And he brings her home. And the mafia doctor is like, you need to take this woman somewhere. She's on drugs. She's this or whatever. And he's like, no, there's more going on. And the doctor also explains she has been raped many times. The scar tissue, the bruising, like this doesn't look good. And we're able to figure out, piece together what's happened to her. And the thing in the case of Asaya, again, I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, she has a trauma bond to Pavel. And like, it's very clear, like, Pavel's aware of what's happening. She's even partially aware of what's happening because she starts clinging to him like a koala. She is still naked. She is still afraid, but she sees this man and he reaches out a hand. And instead of, in some cases we see where a woman doesn't want any man near her, she attaches to Pavel, and almost to the point where he can't, like, he can't even give her a shower without being there. And he's worried about, you know, you're naked, I'm touching you to help you. And she doesn't care with him. She completely trusts him immediately. And this is a certain kind of response that people can have to that. And I think it's very different from what we do see in a lot of mafia or dark romances where this happens. And she isn't willing to share who she is with him. It is something that he's able to figure out because she was kidnapped from her brother and sister and they want her back. Like, she has family who loves her, but she feels so dirty and so abused and just has PTSD from this that she doesn't feel like she could look her brother or sister in the face after what she's been through. And so I think she's been taken for a month or two, so she hadn't been there too long. But we just see Pavel trying to figure out how to help her best. Should he contact her family? Should he keep it a secret from everyone? Should he try getting her to therapy? Should he try different things? Like, all the things that he's trying to do to help her. And her, as like, they both start to develop feelings for her, he's very aware that, like, you have trauma bonded to me. You don't even know if you really care about me. I know what I'm feeling for you because caring for you has affected me. But what are we doing to each other by staying around each other when you need to heal? And I'm not enough to heal you. So there were some very serious things looked into. And though this is a short-ish book, like Neva's books are never very long, she's able to put so much of that into this and have it go in a way that was very believable to me. And it was this very powerful journey. It was so beautiful. It's probably like my second favorite in the series. Like, I still love Broken Whispers the most, but this was just, it was so powerful. So this was a 5-star book for me. This was a 3.5 on my swoon scale, and this was a 3 on the spice scale for me. All right, next we have a book that couldn't be anything but a 6-star read, and that's The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. Now, I'm in a little bit of a pickle, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do about it. So this was my Patreon pick of March, which means that my review is exclusive for my patrons. I've never had one of them be a 6-star book before yet. Flawless was an exclusive review. That one I, was able to talk pretty vaguely about it. That one was a 5-star book. But this one was a 6-star book, and so I will eventually be talking about this book a lot, but I'm still not going to talk about it a ton yet because this was exclusive to my patrons who pay for that review, so it feels wrong for me to, like, go into every single thing about it when, like, those people get the exclusive. Like, they picked this book, I did, it was great, but I still want to, like, say a few things about it just so that I'm not like, rah, rah, rah. But I also feel like if you want a deeper review of this, a lot of my friends have already read it, have also given it 6 stars, and they don't have the same constrictions as me, and they can just tell you everything. But I will say that this one is a forced proximity. We are living together. We enter a fake dating situation together. We have a basketball player and a flight attendant. And we also have a hero who is very guarded. He's been burned before by women, and he does not trust easily. It's him and his sister against the world. Well, now his sister has a partner because Mile High was about his sister Stevie finding love. And we have Ryan and Indy, who Indy has just gotten out of a 6-year relationship and she has nowhere to go, and Ryan now has an open bedroom, which is also close to his sister. And it was his sister's room, and so she is like, please let Indy stay with you. I think you both need someone. And Ryan very much does not want to need anyone, but he also is such a genuine, kind, good human, and he can't help but be a kind, genuine, good human to Indy, even if he does do it with a little bit of snark, and he does, he very much is a neat freak and a very organized person, which granted, like, he needs to be, man. This dude is at the top of his game, literally. But when it's either like the general manager, or it's not the coach, I think it's the general manager, is like, you are a lone wolf. You're not a team player in the way that I need you to be. And I think part of that is that you don't have roots. You don't really have anything on the table except you. And so that's when the fake dating aspect comes in, and he asks Indy to be his fake girlfriend. And in return, he'll go to a wedding she needs to go to with her ex-boyfriend. And she's like, I don't need you to go to that with me. In fact, I don't know if I want you to. And so he goes about trying to convince her. So this book touches also on some beautiful love languages. Love languages get brought up in this book quite a bit, and I liked that. And yeah, I had a great time with this. Again, it's on my Patreon if you'd like to check out a 30-minute review of this, but since it's my 6-star, I still had to say, I cared about this book so much. It's definitely at the top of the favorites of the year. Of course, it was going to be 6 stars. I can't wait for the next one. I think Caught Up is next. And I think that's going to be Kai's book, which is a single dad and his nanny, I think is going to be. I just can't wait to see what else Liz Tomford writes. I wish she hadn't unpublished her previous books, because I really want those. But hopefully she does get those re-edited and put out, because I want to read those ones too. I just loved it. So that was a 6-star book for me, y'all. It was a 4.5 on my swoon scale, okay? That is how high Ryan is on my swoon scale, y'all. Like, ooh. And it was a 3.5 on the spice scale for me, because it is a slow burn. Like, it burns hot when the burning's happening, but it is a slow burn because, I also should say this, Ryan is celibate at this point in his life. So it takes a bit of teasing and convincing to get him to break that. All right. Now we have, okay, yes, I'll do the other one and then I have an honorable mention. So most recently, another 5-star that I had, this was One Look by Lena Hendricks. So there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to read this. One, I had seen this book show up in Elsie Silver's newsletter. She had said, if you like single dad, small town, this book is out by one of my colleagues, read this. That happens all the time. Authors do newsletter exchanges all the time. But I like small town single dad. He was a grumpy sunshine. I was like, I'll snap it up. So I did. When it released, I grabbed it. But also, Lena Hendricks is going to be at a book signing that I'm going to the end of April, which is awesome. It's only a month away. I'm so excited to go to that. And I was trying to find other authors there that I wanted to see their books from, because the main reason I'm going is Pam Godwin, and I'm able to drive to this one. So I was like, hell yes, I want to go see Pam Godwin at a smaller signing. Hell yes, I want to go do that. But I wanted to see what other authors I would like. And so Lena Hendricks, she was someone I wanted to try. And so I grabbed this book. And I just want to say on the outset, like, this book really worked for me. But it's very, like, honestly, there's pretty low angst in this. It's not, like, overly dramatic or anything. And so I understand if other people won't see this as a 5-star book for me. But this book just had so many tropes that I love, and they were done well. And it also did give me Heartless vibes, okay? Now, I've said this when I was talking about it to friends, and I'll say, I'm not saying it is going to give you the same level of feel that Heartless went. Like, this isn't a 6-star book for me. This was missing the little extra oomph that I need for a book to be a 6-star book. But I had such a wonderful time, and I loved that it didn't have a third act breakup, and I loved that it was low angst, and I just love the small town and the found fit, like all of that stuff in there. So that's what I mean about, like, it gives me Heartless vibes. And when people do, if you've read this, read this, like, I will do a video where I'm like, if you've read Heartless, try this, because I think that as long as you go in knowing, like, okay, this isn't going to be Heartless, you could still very much enjoy this. So this one is, we have a grumpy coach. He is a college football coach. He has a daughter who is, I think she's like 9 or 10. I actually don't remember her age. She might even be a little younger. And they go home for a funeral that has to happen. And he's from this small town. And there's also like a family feud that goes on in this town. And because of that, there's a man who died. and he was like not super loved by everyone. And some of the older ladies of the town are worried that not enough people will come to this funeral. So they hire a woman, who is our heroine, named Lark, to play a mourner at the grave site. And so this out-of-work actress goes to this town to be a mourner. And so she's doing her job. She's crying over him, makes the people in town think, like, did this man have a secret, like, hot young lover that none of us knew about? But then our hero, Wyatt, is like, who is this sketchy woman crying over this guy? So, like, he doesn't quite get it, what's going on, right? So, and then when she's there, she decides that she wants to stay in this town. And so they point her to a place where she can rent a pretty cheap apartment above like a barn or garage or something. I don't remember where it was. And then she gets a job as like a waitress in town, but she's terrible at the job. But the town like kind of loves her, and like one side of the family feud kind of like adopts her into their side of town, because like you have to pick a side, you know. It's like the Baileys and their rivals, like you have to pick a side. And then the hero, he actually decides to stay in the town too, because he wants his daughter to be around her family. And also he has a father who has dementia. He is in an assisted living, but like his two brothers and a sister, he has two brothers and a sister. His sister is also away from town. Like the brothers have been having to handle it. And he's felt like he kind of bailed on them. And the brothers, like, because he initially after college was an NFL player. That didn't work out. So he became a college coach. And they were like, well, we wanted you to live your dream, man. But he's realizing he wants to be there for his family. So he, for some of the off season, he also has some college kids who need to stay on the right track so that they can play on his team. And so these three troublesome kind of college kids are also going to be staying with him. And so Lark, who they're neighbors, because he's like staying at the house and she's staying at like, you know, the guest place or whatever. So they're neighbors, and they have this crazy chemistry together that he, you know, is really into it. But he actually hires her to be his assistant during the time that he's there. And so she's helping manage these college kids and actually helping with his daughter and just like helping him manage everything. So then they kind of become boss and employee for a little bit too. So that's kind of the setup for them. And Lark, she's so funny. Like when she's being the mourner, like it begins with her, like he spooks her kind of, and she like falls on top of the casket in the grave. Like it's so, I was just like secondhand embarrassment was so high. Like I was like, oh my God. But they have this great banter. It's so fun. And I just love watching her kind of like be accepted by this town. And again, there isn't a third act breakup in this. There is a like third act separation that has to do with their work, but it's literally like physical separation. Like they have to be long distance for a little bit. And how that was handled, I just really appreciated it, because y'all know I don't super love an angsty third act breakup. Like there's something that I am resigned to at this point, being a romance reader. Like there's going to be the third act breakup. But I like how this one was handled. And that's another piece that reminded me of Heartless, right? Is that the third act was handled in a way that I like. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars. This was a 1.5 on my swoon scale, although there also was a lot of love language talked about in this one. Maybe it's a 2 on my swoon scale. And this was a 3 on the spice scale as well. So I liked it quite a bit, and I just wanted to pass it on because, again, if you don't expect it to be as perfect as Heartless, I think you could still have a really good time with this book. I really liked it. Just that trigger warning for a parent with dementia and seeing some of their outbursts that they have with it. Just be aware. Okay, and now I have my bonus book that I said I would talk about. This one is an honorable mention because it's really only 5 stars for one tiny part of it, and maybe you can guess where I'm going with this. So a book that released this month was Miles Ever After, and this is a epilogue bind up. So it has 4 epilogues. It has 1 for each of the books, and we get to see what happens. Some of them start kind of directly after their book ends and then go through a few years, and we see the different struggles that people are having. And so The one for me that makes this 5 stars is obviously the takeover. So let's just show that, the takeover epilogue. It is only this much of it as a whole. It's like 50 pages. This 50 pages, I want to just like rip out of this and put into the back of the takeover because y'all, I don't care about any of the other brothers. I've said it 100 times, I'll say it now. There was some cute moments. There was also some super heavy stuff, like for the epilogue of, the Casanova, like that was pretty hard. It deals with infertility. It's also the shortest epilogue, so that's good, but like that was a lot. There also is like kind of maybe some setup for a new series later on, having to do with like the sons of everyone, because there's Eduardo, who's an adopted son, and then there's Tristan's 3 sons, well, 4 sons now that we see. So there's definitely a potential for her to do a second generation series, and y'all, the way that I would die for that, like I would love to see that. I would love to see Fletcher and Patrick and Eduardo and all of them, like whatever, it'd be amazing. But the epilogue for Tristan and Claire completely makes this for me. If nothing else, download this on KU to read the epilogue for the takeover because it was beautiful. Okay, like there were so many beautiful moments between Tristan and Claire, between like they have 3 more babies together. There's this absolutely beautiful part about deciding what the baby's name is going to be, and I won't spoil it for anyone, but I ugly cried. I ugly cried for a part when Claire says something to him about the baby's name. I loved it so fucking much. So this just has to be an honorable mention because y'all, Tristan, like the takeover is my favorite book of all time. I'm so excited to get to revisit it next month because one of my patrons asked for an annotated copy of it, and I love it so dearly. So yeah, this is an honorable mention for the epilogue that is about the takeover. Again, I couldn't really give 2 shits on a hot summer's day about the other ones. I just don't, okay? Tristan's who I love, and I loved it. So there we go. Those are my favorites of March. There was actually a lot of great reads, right? I had 8 6-star reads. I reread a lot of books. I had a lot of 5-star reads, but it was fantastic. Some of my favorites of the year are in here. It's going to be great. So I thank you so much for watching this. I thank you so much to my patrons and my channel members who help me be able to do this full time. If you want to support my channel, you can start by just subscribing and liking. You could also send a super thanks or check out if you want to become a channel member or a patron yourself. You get access to a whole bunch of benefits. But the best benefit to me is you watching my video and liking it. So give me a green heart to celebrate how March was, if you can. So thank you so much for watching, friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye.